time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. Today, I am here with the wonderful Rachel Alexandria, and my name is Jeanette Anderson. I love hosting this podcast because I know I am speaking to my peeps, those of you who are 55 plus and hashtag not done by a long shot, and who are really committed to making a difference in the world. So today we're going to be talking about how you can do that without burning yourself out. So how to end loneliness by caring without carrying other people's energies. Because, you know, those of you who are here, who have big hearts, who are doing a lot of great work in the world, who really care about your clients, your prospects, those that you serve, may be experiencing empathy fatigue, maybe experiencing burnout, may just be experiencing the frustration of keeping going. So that's why I'm excited you're here, Rachel, because it's not an uncommon experience and you've got some great solutions for us. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Tell us where you're currently speaking to us from.
I am speaking to you from the lovely San Diego, California.
Ooh, nice there. Nice. I love it. It's so consistent in terms of weather and temperature and stuff. It's awesome. I'm in Calgary. We were just talking about the fact that it's August, but we just had a big hailstorm here earlier this week that damaged my vehicle and a bunch of stuff. Calgary gets some wonky weather in the summer, let me tell you. So it's so I envy where you are. So I'm going to tell you the official word about Rachel, read you her bio, and then we're going to find out the juicy tidbits behind the scenes that you might not guess about her just looking at her or listening to her. So Rachel helps high performers out of their sabotaging secret messes like overwhelm, anxiety, perfectionism, and people pleasing. A former psychotherapist turned soul medic, she has written 3 books on difficult conversations, inner critics, and stress relief. Her clients range from CEOs to general counsels to multi-million-dollar business owners who say, I wish I had a pocket Rachel with me at all time. I love that. Pocket Rachel, that's a good thing to be. So, and today we're going to be talking, like I said, about how to end loneliness by caring without carrying other people's energy. So why is that topic important to you, Rachel? And welcome.
Thank you. It's important to me because I'm a deep feeler. And eventually I learned that I'm actually an empath. I'm somebody who picks up other people's feelings. The longer that I have worked with clients, because I've been doing this 18 years, and I work with very tender-hearted people, no matter how successful they are in the world,
Yep.
they have really, soft hearts. And when we're working through the difficult things that they're processing and their inner resistances, their limiting beliefs, the stuff they picked up in childhood that really isn't true but still affects them, what I came to see over and over is that everyone's carrying burdens that don't belong to them. Whether it's, I have to constantly make money because my parents didn't have enough, no matter how many millions I have in the bank, to, I can't ever do the thing I really want to do because of what people are going to think about me, which you would think is an internal criticism. But when we really dive in and do the work and find their inner critic, there's some portion of it that's not even their voice. It's their mom's voice, it's their dad's voice, it's that mean art teacher's voice. So in both of our past and our present, those of us who are at all sensitive are always picking up the weight of other people's stuff.
Mm,
And we no longer have common ways to discharge that. So it just weighs us all the time. And then we find people exhausting, and it
mhm,
keeps us so separate from one another. And we have an epidemic of loneliness in this country. I
mhm.
don't know if that's also true in Canada, but it's definitely true in the United States.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. In fact, it's one of the trends, the four trends that I talk about a lot when it comes to maturepreneurs in particular, because there's millions of older people that are going into business and creating enterprises because they have to and they choose to keep going. They have to make money and they choose to continue to make money and contribute. And most of them, many of them, in fact, in Canada, 1 in 4 Canadians claim to be lonely, and
Mm,
many of them are older people. So it's higher in that particular demographic. And it's one of the silent epidemics that no one pays any attention to, but that is
mhm,
having a huge impact on who we're being and how the world is shifting and how business is shifting, because that's really impacting it as well. So yeah, I'm glad we're talking about this. So there's about 12 things that I just wrote down that I want to talk to you just from that first thing, but let's find out a little bit more about you first. So tell us something that people wouldn't guess about you, that or a juicy secret.
Oh man.
The juice, the better.
You gotta prep me for the what are my juicy secrets? I tend to be an open book, but of course there's things, you live a full life.
Yeah.
Of course you've got stuff. Something that people would not tend to guess about me is that I am a game master for Dungeons and Dragons.
I love it. No, I wouldn't have guessed that. You just don't look like a D&D kind of gal, but yeah. So how long have you been playing Dungeons and Dragons?
I started during the pandemic.
Oh,
I had a
really?
friend who would talk about it online, and when the pandemic started, I'm I'm a relationship expert. Like I am very good at taking care of myself, and I'm an only child. So I know as an extroverted only child how much I need people contact. And the
Yeah.
pandemic started, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to be okay unless I have social connection
Yeah.
because I've spent many years alone and dealing with loneliness. So I reached out to a friend and I said, hey, can you teach me how to play this? Because that seems like something people gather to
Yeah.
do and hang out with each other for multiple hours at a time.
Mhm.
So he started a group 5 years ago that I joined. And then 2 years after that started, I had another friend who wanted to learn to play. So I started a group.
Oh, cool. That's very cool. It's very involved. So yeah, it would take a lot of your mind and creativity as well.
Yeah.
So you're right. I wouldn't have guessed that. All right. And tell us a little bit about your journey. So, where you came from, how you got to where you are in terms, because you've been in business for 18 years. So
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that journey.
I well, so I studied creative writing when I was in college because honestly, I love writing and I love reading and I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
fun fact, I did think about studying psychology. I just didn't choose to because at 18, I was worried about turning into Lilith Crane from Frasier because we had no examples on TV. Talk about you can't be what you can't see. We
Yeah.
had no representations of like healthy therapy
Yes.
in mass media. So I thought if I become a therapist, I'm going to become this cold, clinical, heart disconnected logic machine, which I didn't want to be.
Right.
So I went off and did my creative writing thing. I ended up getting a Master of Fine Arts in Poetry because I just was sort of like, that sounds interesting. uh it's just funny when I look at it in retrospect. um and then I was just working an administration job. I mean, no shame to that. Like administrators and administrative assistants are what makes everything run,
Yeah.
and I love the experience, but it was not paying me well, and
Mhm.
it was in a really dead end place.
Right.
And my husband looked at me at one point and said, what are you doing? Like, you don't care about this job at all. You're like rolling out of bed to shamble in and you're getting paid crappy. Like, change something about this. So he was right. He didn't say it that commandingly, but he was right. And I had one of those, I call it, even though I don't identify as Christian, I call it like a come to Jesus type moment where you're like, okay, life is grabbing my attention,
Mhm.
and spirit is like, what are you going to do? Like, here is a fork in the road. So I looked for other jobs. Everything was lateral move. Nothing was going to be a real change. And I was like, you're telling me it's not going to be that easy. So I really like did some deep contemplation and realized what I care about most is helping people not suffer when they don't have to.
Mm.
So I was like, oh man, I have to go back to school again and get another graduate degree because no one lets you be a therapist without that. So
So I was right when I was 18. I should have become a psychologist. Yeah. And
I
so
had an inkling. Yeah.
yeah, and so on that note, let's talk about your why. So you don't want people to suffer, when they don't have to, but what would you consider your purpose to be, your why?
I mean, that's it. I am blessed with the ability to see so many things very clearly. I think you have this in common with me. Like, you can see the truth in people,
Mhm.
and it's like you see through all the obstacles, or you see why they're easy to move. Like, you ever see that image of the kid that's like freaking out because they're drowning and they're holding a rope, and then someone comes and just stands him up because he's
Yeah,
in like a foot of water.
yeah,
It
exactly.
feels like that. It feels like I walk around through the world a lot of the time and see people freaking out in a whole foot of water. And I'm like, you can here, let me help you stand up.
Yeah.
And that feels like both a mandate and a privilege.
What a beautiful way to phrase that. I love that. And can really feel the energy of both of those being true. Because a lot of times people say, I'm honored or, this is a privilege or whatever, but they don't really mean it. So I can really feel that. And
Oh,
yeah,
I love it.
my,
It's
my
amazing.
exactly. My phrase that I often use similarly is stop drowning in the shallow end of the pool. Either dive in or get out and have a margarita, but stand up. It's the same thing.
So that's probably why Spirit reminded me of that image.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
So what has been kind of your transformation on this journey? So you went back to school, yes,
Hmm.
and then did you go right from that into launching your own business, or did
Yep.
you? Yeah. And how
Yeah, I
you went from being an employee to an entrepreneur? So what was that transition like for you?
I did not expect that at all. I had zero designs at being an entrepreneur. I thought when I went back to school, oh, I'll work in a clinic. I honestly did not think ahead all that much, but I was like, oh, there's a path, just like being a dentist or something, not thinking a dentist is somebody who establishes a business, but okay. But lots of therapists work in someone else's clinic practice. What I did not know is coming up that way, especially as you're building your hours, if you work under someone else. And I was in Washington, every state has different regulations about this. The state that I was living in at the time, I would have had to be working under someone else's license and getting paid basically what I was making before I went back to school. And I was like, no,
Yeah.
I'm not willing to, honestly, looking back, I'm like, I might have made better money. But at the time I was like, no. And when I was in school, here's what got me actually started. Um, I had to quit my job in my second year because I had to take on my clinical internship, and there just was no way to do both. Just because they're during the same business hours. And I had a friend, and both my friend and my husband were like, you have all this experience with writing. People would pay for your help with that. People writing their master's theses, people, there are all kinds of people in my class and beyond trying to get papers done and other things. And I was like, really? And somehow from that, I was like, oh, I could just offer the skill I already have and make money. And so I built a website from scratch back in the day, back in
Yes.
back in the early 2000s, I built an HTML website. Not the first time I built one, and press the button, like click okay, and was like, okay, now the phone's gonna ring. Like that's how sweetly naive I was. I was like, why is the phone not ringing? I put it out on the internet. I'm not even kidding. It was literally like that. I was like, okay, okay, click. I did
I
many.
love that phrase, sweetly naive, too.
I
That's
mean, you don't know until you know,
yeah,
No point in
exactly.
judging and being mean to the past version of myself. She was so passionate and so optimistic. And but eventually a few people did hire me to do writing coaching for them. And the first time I had a session with somebody and I walked away with $100 in my hand for an hour of my time, I was like, yes to that. Absolutely,
Yeah, yes.
Uh yeah. So that really got me into the idea, and I really thought, oh, if I can control all, if I can run all of the aspects, I can really do this how I want. And I just kind of stepped fully out of the matrix is how I see it now.
Interesting. I like that. All right. So tell us a little bit about on that kind of initial entrepreneurial learning trajectory that you were on.
Mhm.
And since then, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about being an entrepreneur or from being an entrepreneur?
I started a podcast back in the day when it was called Blog Talk Radio,
Wow.
because I was like, people need to know about this. The biggest thing I learned, one of the biggest things, uh, when you start a business, it will bring up all of your inner stuff. No one told me that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, all of my fears of rejection, all my issues with abandonment, all of my like, am I good enough stuff? Like, and what if I succeed? What if I fail? Like, it puts you through an emotional ringer.
Yes.
And
Scarcity is right in your face all the time
yeah,
when,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I actually often tell people there is no better. Half of my background is in facilitation of personal development workshops and teaching coaching certification programs. Well, all of my background is that, and all of my background is in business startup and turnaround. I've been doing those for 40 years. And
Yeah.
there is no better personal growth workshop than starting a business.
As
Um,
long as you address it that way. Like,
Yes,
yeah.
and do the work to actually learn the lessons and move through the limiting beliefs and get support with that, because otherwise it just brings your shit up and leaves you feeling
And
awful.
then you just feel like crap
Yeah,
and probably fail at some point. Yeah.
exactly. So how did you get support for that? What was
I'm laughing because I'm like, did I? Uh
your
I didn't have, I was, bootstrapping the whole time. I never had any money from family or like my husband paid for us to live. He had a good job, and that's not nothing. Like, let me say, I couldn't have done it the way I did it if I hadn't been married to someone who had a good income.
yeah,
But he put zero money into my company. Like, that was all me figuring out, how do I do this? So I had I mean, I was in school to become a therapist, so there was definitely a whole support network there
yeah,
in the first couple years, and lots of colleagues. So I think that was part of it. But oh, I also had joined an organization that no longer exists called Biznick, and
that-
the tagline was networking that doesn't suck.
yep. Okay.
And what was great about them is anyone in the network could host a workshop about whatever they wanted,
Right.
and most of them were free. So I went to, people who were entrepreneurs in branding and website design and copywriting and business coaching. Like, everyone was always knowledge sharing, and I call that my unofficial MBA.
Yeah.
So
So Well, and what's kind of always mind-boggling to me is that people will go and invest in their education and becoming a psychologist or a a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it is that they do, and
Mhm.
will invest years and thousands of dollars, but then think that they can become a business person with no experience, no knowledge, no investment, no time, no training, no education. And it just kind of makes me tip my head and go, um, how does that
Well,
make sense in your head?
it's
Uh,
also not okay that those institutions don't train people
I
at all.
totally agree wholeheartedly. I was
Yeah.
just going to say, and no one should be trained in a skill without being trained in how to sell that skill, because and run a business in that skill, because otherwise they're out there floundering and failing.
Yeah, I tried to actually create an adjunct program in my graduate school to like have a weekend workshop to at least give people like a starter pack.
Yeah,
I ended up not having enough sponsorship to run it more than once, but I was very passionate about that for a minute. And then I was like, well, I can't care about it more than you guys care about
yeah,
it. So,
exactly.
oh well.
Yeah, I hear you. It is one of my biggest bugbears is that people will go and get certifications in those certifying bodies, whatever they may be, coaching certification or,
Hmm.
universities don't give them the actual tools they need to be successful in that. They teach them how to do the thing, but not how to sell or
Or how to run a company.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what lately has been one of your biggest, because you've been in business 18 years now, and we
Mhm.
will get to your topic about loneliness, I promise, but I'm also just fascinated about your process of staying in the game, because I know, having been in business 40 years, there's lots of iterations, there's lots of
Yeah.
pivots, there's lots of variations on the theme that come along. How have you stayed in the game for 18 years? What are the key things that have kept you both
You know,
going and also externally successful enough to maintain a business that long?
yeah. I would say, I mean, there were times where I had to have side hustles, and people shouldn't be ashamed of that. Like, and I wish someone had said to me way earlier on, you need a side hustle for sure
Yeah,
for the first 3 to 5 years,
yeah,
because that's just how long it takes. I didn't believe people. I was like, I'm extroverted, I'm charming, I'm smart, I'm really motivated, and I have all this time. I'm going to do it. Yeah, that just doesn't make up for it. It's a long tail. It just takes time. Um, so that's part of it. One of the things I heard early on in business is the strongest success factor for entrepreneurs is risk taking.
mm,
And that made a lot of sense to me because a lot of people aren't willing to try stuff. I
mhm,
mean, and especially when it comes to marketing, people think that it's some sort of massive stage performance that's going to be broadcast across the world. No, you put out a crappy flyer and no one will remember it in 5 minutes.
yeah.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and no one remembers because we're just flooded with information. So, one of my pieces of advice I give to new entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs is fail faster.
Mm, yes.
I have failed a lot. I've had 7 iterations of my website, and only maybe 2 of them were okay. I've had multiple business names,
Yeah.
probably 15 different brand business cards.
Okay. And one of the things on that note, if you're listening, ladies and gentlemen, to this and you're getting going, do not invest a lot of time, money, and effort into your marketing until you've delivered your
Yeah.
product or service multiple times.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know what problem you're solving. You're
Yep.
going to waste so much time, money, and effort on that lovely website that A, no one's going to because you're not driving traffic.
Yep.
B, it doesn't convert because you're not having the right conversation with the right person. And C, you don't really know what you're doing until you've done it for a little bit. So
Yeah.
otherwise you end up having 7 different websites, and that's not cheap, and that's not. So let yourself iterate, let yourself learn as you go, and then yeah, just keep throwing stuff at the wall to see what works and what sticks.
Yeah, it
Um,
worked for me because I didn't finance any of those sites until the last two. The first five were ones I did by hand.
Okay. So then you learn those skills, and
Yeah,
that's good and bad, right? Saves you
for
money,
sure.
but also pulls you a little bit off of your core genius, perhaps, and is a good way to do that, especially if you're bootstrapping, but also can really take you out of focusing on strategy, driving revenue, and delivering services. So that's
Absolutely.
yeah. So now that you've been in business for a long time, what keeps you going?
I love what I do. I mean, I feel daily so fulfilled to watch high leverage people be freed up from their internal struggles and these, the places where they're drowning, and just have them be like, oh, that's where is that problem that I was just grappling with? It's actually gone inside of me. I can't feel it anymore. And now I feel so much peace and so much relief. I don't know that that'll ever get old for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing this 40 years, and I have in one of my bios, most of them actually, that I'm still stupidly in love with what I do. It still lights me up. It still gets me out of bed every morning excited. And it's shifted. Like my market now
Yeah.
is maturepreneurs. It wasn't a year ago. I was working
Mm,
almost exclusively with women and helping them profit from their purpose. And I still
mm,
am doing that work, but now I'm doing it with maturepreneurs. And I have a whole new passion about shattering ageist stereotypes so that these people can continue to be, these people and myself can continue to be a contribution in the world,
yeah.
and be, make money, because there's a lot of percentage of this population that is living with the oh, I'm screwed of, I can't retire and I don't know what to do or where to go. So I loved your comment earlier about, you turned your passion into what you do and hung out your shingle and then learned how to create a business that actually works so that you can do the work that you love, which is really supporting people in moving forward, but doing it without the baggage. So let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about the how we carry anxiety and sadness and hurt that we think is ours, but is not.
Mm,
How do
mm.
people tell whether or not what they've got is theirs or someone else's?
That's a great question. So I'll invite your audience to just practice along with me, because I do think it helps to be facilitated in this question. If you think about something that you're feeling right now, however you're feeling in your body right now, and then you just sit with it for a moment, and then you ask yourself, what percentage of this anxiety, stress, whatever, authentically belongs to me? You will hear a number. It'll be the first, it'll be like bloop, and that is the amount.
Okay.
You don't need to second guess it. I mean, it could be 80%, it could be 10%, it might be 100%. 100% of it could be yours, which is totally fine. Sometimes that's the case. I have almost never worked with anyone where something was coming up and they were kind of not able to move through, like stress, whatever. And I said, let's just check in. What percentage of that right now belongs to you, authentically just you? And had them say 100%. It's always like, oh, 25%. Okay. So the other 75% has no business being there because it's not yours.
So when you say is authentically yours versus not yours, help people understand more of what you mean by that.
So I'd like to use an example. I have a little drawing series that I do on my blog about this. Say you are sitting with a friend over lunch, and they're detailing a litany of woes to you about terrible things that are happening to them. And then you hug them and you're sorry and you do what you can for them, and then you leave that. And how much of your mind is still kind of reflecting to that throughout the day? How much do you feel kind of like heavier as you walk through your day because your good dear friend is having such a struggle? It strains you, it worries you, right? And I'm not saying we shouldn't think about people, help people, care about people, but there is an energetic burden
Mhm.
that if you can take that off, if you can turn towards your understanding of spirit or the universe, or however you want to say, even the earth itself,
Mhm.
and lift that off of you and be like, this part isn't mine to carry. So I
Mhm.
have to set it down. I don't, doesn't mean I'll stop thinking about, oh, can I find them a lawyer, or can I find them a doctor, or should I bring them some soup? Great. Do those things. Do the things you can do. But if you had your daughter or your sister or whatever, and they really had to pee super bad, but you're nowhere near a bathroom,
Mhm.
can you, if you're right next to a bathroom, can you go pee and relieve their bladder? No.
Yeah, good.
It's ludicrous, it's laughable, right? But we do this energetically. We're like, I'm going to carry some of this burden for you because it's so much, but all we do is duplicate the burden.
Yes.
We don't actually ease theirs.
Yes.
So we
Yeah.
have to learn how to take it off.
Awesome. I love that description. I think it's very clear. So, how do people, before we get into the how they take it off,
Mm,
is there, because one of the biggest lessons for me, or things that I found very helpful, is when someone once a long time ago asked me, whose voice is that? Because I
mm,
assume that because it's in my head and it's my voice, that it
mm,
therefore is my voice. It's my
mm,
thought, my thinking. Um, and when they said, whose voice is that? It's like, well, what do you mean? It's mine. And it's like, no, nope, really not. Sounds like it's in
mm,
your voice, but it's not
mhm,
yours. Do you have any other tips for people on how to really clarify?
mhm.
Is it my voice? Is that my energy? How else? So they can kind of do that intuitive check in. What percentage of this is mine? Is there any other ways that they can identify what's not theirs?
Yes, it often revolves around doing some deeper work. Like I don't have like an easy 1-2 answer. The easiest one is the one I just gave,
Yep.
because you will get something if you are at all open to your intuition. The other way is just starting to work with your inner parts of yourself. So if there's a really critical voice in your head, making enough space inside to turn toward it and with curiosity and compassion be like, why are you doing this? Like why does it feel important to you to be criticizing me so hard? And do you know that that's actually causing me harm? That's actually hurting? Because this is part of why I started really getting onto how we carry other people's energy. I
Mhm.
do a lot of inner critic work with people, and sometimes we'll go, well, most of the time we go in and we, if we really can get centered and compassionate and open, the inner critic's like, what? Huh? Oh, that's hurting? I didn't mean to be hurting. I thought I was helping you. I thought I was kind of pushing you, like, let's go, let's make sure bad things don't happen. Let's make sure we get the project done. Let's make sure we don't lose our job. And when you say, okay, but this way isn't working, it's hurting me, so can we find another way? The authentic critic will usually be like, I mean, I'm skeptical, or I mean, maybe, but yeah, I mean, I'm willing to try.
Mhm.
And I have run in with people where the critic's like, no, you're just stupid and lazy, and I have to this and that, even when met with compassion. And then I was like, rutro, that's not yours.
Mhm.
Because all of our natural parts, when met with compassion and brought to conscious awareness, want to help us.
Mm.
If something in you doesn't want to help you, even when you're compassionate and curious with it, not attacking, not judging, not directing, but like, hey, why are you doing this? Can you notice that this hurts? If they're still hostile or, stubborn or like not wanting to at all,
Yeah.
that's not yours. That's somebody else's, because we can't change other people's energy inside of us.
Right. Great distinction as well. And I love the row. That is the curiosity and compassion, if it is not shifting that, because we do sincerely want to support ourselves. I
Mhm.
mean, unless you've got some real challenges in terms of your mental health makeup and so forth, our natural human tendency is to want to be self-loving. It's all the other noise and clutter that gets in the way of that.
Mhm.
And so for me, asking the question, whose voice is that, helps me to step back a little bit and go, is that my voice? Is that maybe my mom or my someone else? And
Yep.
this is another way to just dive deeper. And I think curiosity is such a brilliant approach to clarity because
Mhm.
it allows us to just let go of the knowing that this is that or this is that, and to just be curious, which allows some detachment, allows us to not be so entrenched in what is, and compassion allows us to be okay with our humanity and just not um, loosen the hold on that critic or that habit or whatever. What are some
Mhm.
other ways that you support people in discharging or letting go of those things that are not theirs?
So a lot of times people are struggle to let go of what's not theirs if it is something that they feel is helping a family member or a loved one or something like that, or they're concerned about, like I talk a lot about this now about how to care without caring because of what's happening globally. Like we are inundated with a news cycle of people suffering around the world, and those of us who have empathy, who are caring, it's exhausting.
Mhm,
It is so hard to watch the suffering of others, and we can't do anything about the majority of it.
mhm,
So a lot of people initially can be resistant to letting go of that energy, that empathy burden, because they don't want to become uncaring, right? They don't
mhm,
want to shut down or dissociate from it. And like most things, it's not binary. To no longer carry that energy doesn't mean you don't care.
mhm,
But there's a difference between loving somebody and hoping and praying for them, and holding the weight of it on your shoulders. I mean, we've had a lot of turmoil in US politics, as everyone has seen. And during the 2020 election series, I was physically getting ill.
mhm,
I'm very politically active, and I was like going to show up to rallies and stuff like that. And I couldn't leave the bathroom.
mhm,
And my spiritual teacher was helping me be like, you can observe, but you cannot energetically participate, Rachel.
mhm, mhm,
Stop. Like I could feel it in my gut. Somebody's cat would be dying or something, and I used to be on Facebook like, oh my gosh, sending energy, sending love, and I could feel the twist in my gut.
mhm,
No, I can't send you my energy.
mhm,
I physically cannot do that. It is bad for me, it is bad for us. What we can do is get clear with the understanding that everyone is equally supported in the universe.
mhm,
I'm not talking about material support. Yes, there are privileged people and much less privileged people. That is true. That is an inequality and it's not okay. But spiritually, which is what we're trying to do, right? I'm trying to send my energy to people. No, I mean, send money if you want to send money, great. But energetically, people are equally held.
mhm. Yeah.
And I have to stay in that awareness when my energy wants to like go and save people. Like, no, 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 no. I am not an angel in this life. Like I don't have limitless power. I am a human being. And
Mhm.
what I can do is see every single person surrounded by divine support.
Yes. I love the practicality of care and act on your caring, but you can do that without the hooks. You can do that without
Exactly.
carrying it, and one of the biggest lessons for me as a facilitator when I was learning to facilitate personal development programs, and I would end up carrying a lot of the energy of the people in the room. I was doing very deep work, very, very,
Yeah.
very significant secrets and issues and so forth. And um, it was heavy. It was heavy work. Um,
Mhm.
it was extraordinarily exciting work for me, but it was still heavy. And one of the things that I learned finally is how to be super or to be invested but not attached. And there's a
Yeah.
big difference between being detached and attached or not attached. And what I hear you saying is that you can
Mhm.
be not attached to the outcome, to the thing, to the person, to the energy, to the situation, and still and not be detached, which is
Yeah.
uncaring, which is disconnected emotionally and
Mhm.
spiritually. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's an important distinction. uh, Harkening back to 2020, I was in the US when
Mhm.
COVID happened. In fact, I was going to go to Disneyland for my 60th birthday,
Aw.
and they closed it down the week before my birthday for the first time in
No.
60 years. I was just so heartbroken. And I got to tell you, I was livid, livid almost every day by the ticker tape of death that every media
Yeah.
channel had on during COVID. It was like so infuriated me because it's to me it felt so irresponsible. If people need to know that, they can go and find it. You don't have to put that fear mongering in people's faces every day, all day long.
Yeah.
It serves no one, and all of the fear stuff that got generated and so forth through that. And so it wasn't until I shifted and thought, okay, like A, don't watch as much TV. B, block that out. Literally, I would sit there and watch TV with my finger over the ticker tape of death and doom. And B or C, I just got into action. So I went and bought a sewing machine and a bunch of material and started making masks for everyone I know. And
Nice.
about 100 masks for various people prior to it all being, easily accessible. And the being in action, even on a small scale, took away some of that carrying of that angst,
Mhm.
that anxiety and anger and frustration. And so I think, as you said, can we have some compassion? It was a little hard for me to have compassion for the media, I will tell you, and their agenda around that. But moving into action often takes us out of that sense of burden around, I gotta, hold all this and then what, right? so
Yeah.
so just in terms of a couple of quick things before we wrap up here, because you've talked so beautifully about a number of human conditions, and one
Mhm.
of the things that I know that really twists people the most is approval issues. I
Mhm.
actually think it's the most devastating issue for any human being to have, because we turn ourselves inside out, trying to be who we think other people want us to be or we should be. And often people who have approval issues or people pleasing or whatever, um, can be very high achievers, because we learn to perform and be hyper vigilant and very effective in many ways at
Yeah.
controlling the universe, but or thinking we can. What are some ways that those people, because a lot of time, not always, but a lot of those people tend to towards perfectionism, tend towards the overachieving because of the need to please. Um, how do you have any special tips for those people on how to put down the shoulds and have tos around? I need to make sure that people like me and love me, so I have to really carry a lot, or I have to invest a lot, or I have to be the person who takes
Mhm.
care of this parent even though I really don't want to, or I have to, you know, that kind of thing. Because I think the
Yeah.
shoulds and have tos that go with approval are often the hardest ones to get unhooked from.
Yeah. I help people confront what's driving that.
Mm,
And it's usually from a child's state of mind, right? It's the child, it's the inner children who are like, if mom doesn't like me, she won't keep me,
mhm,
right? So helping that inner child meet your current adult self who's like, I have a car, I have a job, no one is needing to take care of me for my survival. As children, we don't have it. We can't just be our own independent people. Literally, a 5-year-old cannot exist in the world on their own.
mhm,
That's just not a thing. They are not safe. But if you help the inner child realize, oh, I'm actually this adult self, this like my core adult self is now your safety, is now your love and approval.
Mhm.
That's part of it. The other part is once they're starting to get that sense, um, it's helpful to look at, is the validation of other people ever actually satisfying you?
Mm.
Because when
Mhm.
you get really honest, it's never enough. And it
Mhm.
leads people to think that they're a bottomless pit of need. And so they can't ever like talk about it because it's too shameful and etc. I've been through it. I get it.
Mhm.
The problem is no one can give you enough validation to fulfill you. The only person who can do that is you.
Mm.
So you're looking for love in all the wrong places.
Okay, now I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head.
You're welcome.
Thanks for planting that little earworm.
Uh-huh.
Rachel, you have such a lovely energy and gentleness around how you approach things. I can
Thank you.
see why those who are quite driven and um, uh, tend to carry a lot would just have their shoulders drop and relax around you, um, because you carry that energy and that permission with you. So speaking of which, how do people get to work with you and how do you work with people?
So I work with people in one-off sessions, I call magic sessions, but also I work with people on 3 or 6 month guidance packages because that's about how long it takes to like really get this work solid in them. And a lot of people work with me for a few years. Some people keep working with me for a long time, but that because they want their pocket, Rachel. So yeah, I work with people mostly one on one. I do now actually have a group. I'm like, should I say the title? On Mondays at noon, I'm just starting a new drop-in group
Mhm.
just for people who want to. It's called GFG, and it's get effing grounded, as we
Yes,
say.
perfectly welcome here. All right.
Okay.
And so it's a drop-in, paid drop-in, free
Mhm.
drop-in?
Yeah, it's a paid drop-in group. It's $20 to drop in. It's $50 to get, a month subscription. And it'll be an hour. People just get to share. People again, I get to be in this energy where I help them reground, connect to spirit, and shed other people's energy. So they just are, it's like a little car wash for the soul.
I love that. You have a great way of phrasing things, which is I appreciate because I get that feedback a lot as well, and it's lovely to see someone who's really creative with words. Um,
Turns
and
out the MFA was useful. That's where I used
that's
it.
right, exactly. All that poetry work paid off.
Yeah.
So it allows you to have that poetic soul get expressed in
Right.
writing and in language. That's great. Um, so just very quickly before so what is your website where people can find you and how
It's
do
my
they,
name. It's rachelalexandria.com.
okay? And is that where they would go to access the drop-in group or somewhere else?
That is a good point. I can shoot you the flyer that they
Okay.
can look at. Um, I should put that on my events page. Right now I'm mostly advertising it on socials and to people that I know.
Okay. Well,
Um,
and where is it on your socials? So is it on Facebook or LinkedIn? Where are you
It's
most?
on Facebook. I'm sort of like, can I put a swear word on LinkedIn? I haven't ever really had that presence there. Facebook, I don't care.
Yes.
Yes, it's definitely on Facebook. I can send you the link for my Facebook, and I will be putting it on Instagram as well.
Okay.
Um, so that those would be the places that you find out about the group.
Okay. Well, and I suspect on LinkedIn it's probably the get F and then all of the little ampersand,
Apostrophe, yeah,
etc.
yeah.
rounded. Probably will make it past the
The censors.
but uh, so a couple quick things. One of the things you mentioned is you wrote 3 books about
Mhm.
taking your inner critic and so forth, and you have a gift for our listeners. So what is that?
I do. So I have a workbook called Turn Your Inner Critic into Your Personal Champion.
Okay.
So I'm happy to give that to your listeners. And when they go to access it, they'll get a series of short emails with the video of me walking through each of the steps. It's 5 steps that I've listed out that you can use the workbook and you can go through the videos. Um, just to get started really having a more integrated relationship with your critic, which, it really is just trying to help you. It's just needing some new operating instructions.
Mhm. Like that. All right. So you can go to the show notes to get that. It's her turning your inner critic into your personal champion, and may also be available on her site. So go check out the site, rachelalexandria.com, and reach out to Rachel to have a discussion about, do you need a magic session or do you need some of that, guidance sessions that will help you move through habits and shift those rather than just letting go of the whatever it is in the shorter term. Um, so you meant you have 3 books. How did you write 3 books? How did you get that done? Because you're busy, you got a lot of going on. You gotta. How did you get?
I am fortunate to have good executive function. I know a lot of folks struggle with some neurodivergence. And actually I know people who still write books and have neurodivergence, so I can't speak to that part. But I am the kind of person that I throw my cap over the wall and then I go figure out how to climb the wall to go get it. The first book really wanted to be born because that's a whole other thing I talk about, which is difficult conversations. I, even though I was already a therapist, realized that I had 2 relationships implode.
Mhm,
And part of it was how I was not handling my difficult conversations in a way that I needed to. I
mhm.
was avoiding them because I thought that was serving the relationship. Like, I'll just deal with it in myself. No.
Yeah.
So I had to write the book that I needed to figure out how to prepare for and have difficult conversations without freaking out, becoming a doormat or a steamroller.
Mm, yes. And we do tend to go to one or the other quite often,
Yep,
especially in the area of conscious incompetence, which having difficult conversations and being assertive is for many, many people, especially many women. We're
yep,
just not trained in it. And so we
exactly.
could be competent in it, but we're not because we never get training. So
Yep.
did you write that book before or after the husband?
Oh, that was after the husband. That was one of the relationships that didn't work out.
So that
And
was
we
if you had
still
known the
wouldn't have.
skills.
If I had known those skills before, we still wouldn't have worked out. We were heading in 2 different directions, but we would have figured out earlier that we
Yes.
weren't going to work out. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably had an easier time through that transition as well, perhaps. Um,
Yeah.
and and so coming back to your business, how have those 3 books helped you in your business, and if so, how?
The first book for sure helped. I did it with a book coaching program. And so we generated a lot of buzz. We supported each other's book launch, and I had a good network. So it became, the first book really became a calling card. I got on a lot of podcasts. If I had had other stuff in the back end ready to go, it probably would have taken me farther.
Mhm.
But again, bootstrapping for so long, I didn't have that. Now I have a lot of different things that can do that. But it was great for a while. Like, lots of people wanted to talk about the content of the book, and it still is really rich. That I developed a process called the self-rescue system.
Mm.
So I still teach parts of that in workshops and presentations on how to have difficult conversations.
Awesome. There is something that you said in there that's super important that I hope you heard, for those of you who are listening, that had I had something to then move them on to, in
Yep.
other words, had you had a customer journey in mind with a
Yep.
solution process where you could have walked them through that, or process where you could have taken them from that first problem you were solving with your book to then what's the next problem, and
What's
therefore
next?
the next solution that they need, and then the next problem and the next solution they need, and the next problem, the next solution. That's called the customer journey. That's called a
Mhm.
business model. And that's called something that a lot of people don't get clear on as entrepreneurs. So don't just write a book and assume you're going to be rich and famous and that it'll generate business for you, because it
Nope.
won't.
Nope.
It's a good but very expensive business card. It will
Mm-hmm.
get you on podcasts or
Mm-hmm.
help you on podcasts, but it has to be tied to a revenue generating
Mm-hmm.
strategy or plan. It needs to be part of a bigger solution because it's not going to pay your rent or your mortgage,
No.
but it will support your authenticity, your legitimacy, or kind of uh,
Mm-hmm.
influence, but it won't um, be the business solution that a lot of people think it is. So
Absolutely. Imagine if I had written that book, which sold 8,000 copies, by the way, which is really good in the book market.
yes,
A
it is.
lot of them were free copies, but still.
Um,
Imagine if I'd actually had an email list to follow up with those people.
exactly. If you
That would
had
have been great.
used to build your email list to be able to follow up with them so that you could have them become
Mhm.
clients.
Mhm.
Yes, that would have been very good. So that's one of the reasons why it is good to get a business coach and or some support or be in a program
Absolutely.
that will help you with those things that in hindsight seem obvious, but at the time we don't know what we don't know. We talked about that fact that you've
Mhm.
got the thing on the end of your nose, or you just it's an area of that you don't know. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah,
I love that you support people with what I call the inner work, because I think we need to do both the inner work and the outer work as entrepreneurs. We need to
absolutely.
both let go of those hooks that are holding us back, or the anchors. I call it the anchors. It's one thing to fill your sail with all sorts of marketing strategies and so forth, but you better know where you're sailing and you better lift your anchor before the wind picks up, because otherwise you're going to be
Mhm.
in a tough position in your boat. So get people to support you in lifting those anchors, the inner critic anchors, the not good enough anchors, the I have to be everything to everybody anchors, those things that are holding you back, the carrying everyone else's stuff when it's not yours to carry. And a lot of you, if you are finding yourself really tired, if you're finding yourself really depleted, or not very joyful or excited about things, it just might be that you are carrying stuff that is not yours. So it's probably good to check with someone like Rachel who can help you discern that, help you see it, feel into it, clarify it, and let it go. So thank you for being here, Rachel. And oh yeah, one last thing I want to say, everybody, is don't try and do all this alone.
No.
Rachel talked about figuring a lot of things out, and I just got off a call with another person who's like, I'm very resourceful. I'm a good problem solver. I can do all this on my own.
Nope.
Yeah, you can, and you're gonna end up reinventing the wheel. You're gonna end up wasting time and money on things that are the wrong direction. You're gonna do a lot of trial and error that you may not have to. And frankly, it comes back to the first part of our topic. It's lonely to do it
Yeah.
all on your own. And loneliness does not support us. So,
I would also add, if I can, that trauma and hurt are caused by other people. And clinically, statistically, we've studied they can only be healed by other healthy people.
mm, interesting.
You cannot do it by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And so join a community that supports you. I would love you to please check out maturepreneur.world. Join the network. It is a community of people who have your heart and your hand and your back. And my goal is to provide you a kick in the context so that you will take those risks that Rachel is talking about. Because to be successful, getting going or keeping going, we need to be willing to get outside our comfort zone, do things that are not easy or comfortable, but that move us forward. So go check out Maturepreneur World .world and join the network, join a creative community that will support you in growing yourself and your business, and reach out for additional support like what Rachel is talking about. So go check out her website, rachelalexandria.com, and connect for a call to see whether or not you need Rachel in your pocket. All right, Rachel, what's one last piece of advice you'd like to leave people with when it comes to any of the topics we've been talking about, but really just being their own best friend?
I think it's the truth about you is that you're already good enough. even if you never do another single thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want different results, there may be things you need to look at, work on, change, but it's not because your essential nature is anything other than already being good enough.
Mm. Lovely. And I'm going to leave it right there on that note. Have a wonderful week, everybody. And I will see you next time on the Maturepreneur podcast. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.